Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great day to be great, and it's a great day to get into the world famous utilization report. It's week 5. I don't care if your team's 0-4 or 4-0. We're 0-0 going to this one, baby. We got to get those rosters right, continue that pursuit for fantasy championship gold. But of course, the man of the hour to help us do that, the one, the only, Dwain "The Rock" McFarland. Dwain, happy Utilization Tuesday.
Happy Utilization Tuesday. Always a fun day, Ian. And look, we've got 4 data points now. Some teams have changed in the last 2 weeks, though. We have some big changes to talk about right off the top that are happening. So, super excited to get into it.
Changes in the air. We got quarterback changes. Unfortunately, injury gods continue to give us all their BS. So again, breaking down all of that and much more here on today's Fantasy Life Show. And accordingly, let's get right into it with our DraftKings opening lines. Have some injuries we'll get to in a minute, but first, Dwain, a pair of big quarterback updates. Firstly, involving an injury. Actually, the Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson had the hamstring issue, and he now is reportedly expected to miss 2 to 3 weeks per Brian Wacker. I'm sure Brian is very good at his job. I will say, though, we have not actually had this confirmed yet by the quote-unquote insiders like Rap Sheet, Adam Schefter, the bigger names of the world. So we'll see what happens, Dwain, but by all accounts, it does seem like this is going to be a short-term injury loss for the Ravens. Now, we are going to see the Ravens play the Texans or Rams over the next 2 weeks and then have a week 7 bye. So it does seem like week 8 would be the hopeful return here. In the meantime, it's going to be Cooper Rush. Credit to the man. He's won 9 of 14 career starts, basically spot duty for the Cowboys when Dak Prescott missed time. But Dwain, you're a longtime Cowboys fan, as am I. Not loving life of Cooper Rush under center. I think we can agree on that.
No, absolutely not. I mean, Lamar is the engine to the offense for the Ravens. We all know that. It has been a more pass-heavy team this year, Ian, and some of that has been due to game script. So, yeah, not ideal if you're not going to have Lamar. I would say you'll have more things that don't turn into scrambles, right? So, I mean, you might get a few more pass attempts out of it, but you won't be getting as many big explosive plays down the field, especially to like the tertiary players. Like, this is not ideal for Bateman. It's not ideal for a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. You guys shouldn't really be starting anyway, unless you're playing in like one of Ian's leagues where he has 32 squads on it. We don't really care that much for Cooper Rush in fantasy. I will say they just need to hand the ball off to Mr. King Henry, Ian. Like, that's what they need to do. But the defense is so banged up, man. They've been in these scripts where like they kind of have to pass more, not the Ravens defense we're used to seeing.
You're 100% right about the game scripts and everything. And when you had Lamar Jackson under center, I totally get it. You can't just exactly force feed Derrick Henry the ball. It's Cooper Rush, Dwain. I'm going down swinging with 35 carries to Derrick Henry. You're meaning to tell me that Cooper Rush dropping back to pass has a higher explosive play rate than giving the ball to Mr. Derrick Henry? I refuse to agree with that sentiment. Please just feed the big dog. Again, hasn't had more than 12 carries in the game since week 1. Firmly do expect that to change. Certainly, though, downgrades for basically everyone involved in Baltimore. The other big quarterback change, Dwain, is Dylan Gabriel reportedly expected to start for the Browns per Matt Zenitz. Again, a situation as we record this midday on Tuesday that we have not explicitly heard this from Kevin Stefanski or any of the other big name reporters. But for now, it does seem like that the Joe Flacco, blast from the past, that's what I was looking for, in 2025 is going to be done here. So Gabriel, Dwain, lefty, obviously didn't exactly have too many fans coming out of Oregon, and just a really, really tough spot to expect much of anything good. The Browns are in London this week against the Vikings. Brian Flores' unit has the single best mark in EPA allowed per dropback this season. And then next week, they got to come back to the States, no bye week, and face a rested Steelers defense in Pittsburgh. So I know Pittsburgh hasn't been exactly the best, but man, Dwain, would it really have killed him just to let Joe Flacco take a few more hits for 2 weeks and then get Gabriel ready for week 7 at home against the Dolphins? I don't really get this.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised you don't, because I remember with the Drake May stuff last year, like, what are we waiting on? Let's just do it. Who cares? Like, let's get him out there. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, Flacco's been so bad. Like, I don't see why they don't just go ahead and do it. You need to start evaluating your quarterbacks. You're probably going to have to look at 2 of them this year because we do have Shadur Sanders as well. So maybe the plan is just to get a head start. It's not ideal, to your point. I mean, you get the matchup challenges and just, the fact that this is not an early round draft pick. And this is a season where we're seeing a lot of the rookie quarterbacks struggle anyway. I mean, especially obviously with Cam Ward, that's been a real problem in Tennessee. So we'll see what Dylan Gabriel can do. I will say this, like the Browns have some decent weapons. I mean, you've got David Njoku, you've got Jerry Jeudy. Tillman's going to miss some time now, but you've got Isaiah Bond that's been stepping up. We've got Harold Fannin Jr. You got Quinshon Judkins behind you. So it's like, man, with the right quarterback, like I would feel decent about the weapons they have. I just don't think that it's going to be Dylan Gabriel. I hate to say it, man, but I struggle to think that this is going to be something more than like maybe 180, 190 yards per game passing.
There are some fans, I know former PFF, now CBS Sports, Mike Renner, who I certainly respect his opinion a lot, did really like Gabriel. I believe he was his, one of his top 3 quarterbacks actually of the draft cycle. And just personally having watched him play against my Ohio State Buckeyes a few times, I mean, the dude doesn't have, I think, the arm talent or just the overall just kind of high-end athleticism to really threaten defenses. Every single blade of grass like we talk about with someone like, say, Jackson Dart or even like a young career Josh Allen, quarterbacks who maybe don't have it all figured out yet, but just are enough of a ball of energy to still make good things happen. That's kind of my concern here for Dylan Gabriel. Maybe we do see Isaiah Bond help take the top off of defenses. Certainly Quinshon Judkins doing good thing on the ground as well. So, Dwayne, I'd love to be surprised here, but I'm with you, at least in this near term, not expecting too much from this Browns passing game. You mentioned Cedric Tillman. He is hitting the injured reserve with a hamstring injury. Of course, the real big wide receiver news is Tyreek Hill underwent major reconstruction surgery of multiple ligaments after that absolutely nasty knee injury on Monday Night Football. So, Dwayne, 2026 status in question. We did get word from Drew Rosenhaus saying that the expectation is that he will be ready to start, the beginning of next season. We kind of know how this timeline goes. So get better soon, Tyreek Hill. In the meantime, obviously a bit of a downgrade for, this entire just upside of the Dolphins offense. Jalen Waddle, though, will be rising into the wide receiver 2 ranks. And Malik Washington, suddenly someone that we should be, fairly excited about on the waiver wire.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting, though, last night after Tyreek Hill left the game, Malik Washington's role really didn't change very much. It was Nick Westbrook-Akini's role who changed, and he ended up with like a 50% route participation on the night. So thought that was kind of strange because I'm with you. Like when I look at Malik Washington and think about the way they run the offense, obviously not the same vertical threat that Tyreek can be, but really the way they use Tyreek in this offense is trying to get him into space, letting him run after the catch. That's really what Malik Washington does well. So I tend to agree with you. I think that the guy that probably has the most to benefit here will be Washington. Just thought it was a little bit interesting that it didn't work out that way last night with Westbrook-Akini, or Akini Westbrook being the guy they went to. The other guy, like Darren Waller, Ian, didn't have a full-time role or anything, but it was his first game back, caught the 2 touchdown passes. So they do need someone that they can get the ball to down inside the red zone. So it feels weird to say, but I won't be surprised if we see Darren Waller at like 60% route participation next week. This last week, he was very limited, but as he gets healthier, and we saw what this offense did with Jonnu Smith last year. Now, look, Jonnu Smith's a good player, so we're not saying that Darren Waller is just going to do all those same things, but I mean, if one of these other receivers don't step up, it wouldn't be surprising if we did see more from Darren Waller. Probably, I mean, I still got him as a low-end tight end too right now, but man, he could gradually push his way up into being like that high-end tight end 2 range.
Just 16 snaps, so would like to get another data point before we are again trusting him with any level. But hey, look good out there. Beat Sauce Gardner for one of those touchdowns. I mean, certainly seems like he is still plenty athletic. So don't exactly view him as the same sort of yak threat like Jonnu Smith. So I am a little bit doubtful that he gets those targets. But I don't know, Dwayne, like you said, Malik Washington didn't necessarily see his role expand immediately. So maybe 2025 is just setting up to be the year of Darren Waller. We shall see. Wouldn't go crazy again for either Washington or Waller on the waiver wires, but certainly due for nice upgrades on the rest of season rankings. Lastly, Dwayne, we do have Jets running back Braylon Allen headed to IR. That's a nice little boost for Breece Hall. In the meantime, also know Titans OC Nick Holes said that tight end Gunnar Helm is expecting to have an increased opportunity moving forward. Not great for the dozens of us who are still, Chigaconquo truthers out here. 49ers GM John Lynch said Brock Purdy and Ricky Pearsall will be questionable for Thursday night. Seems like Jawan Jennings is on a similar track. Also know that the Vikings offensive line is all kinds of banged up people. We now have Brian O'Neill with an MCL sprain considered week to week. Reminder that Donovan Jackson is already sidelined until at least week 7, and Ryan Kelly is coming off a concussion. No worries, though. Just got to face Myles Garrett and company in London. What could go wrong? And finally, Raiders left tackle Colton Miller with a high ankle sprain and hairline fracture is headed to IR. Certainly not the group that we wanted to deal with any injuries for. We will see what happens there. So that is going to wrap up, though, the DraftKings opening lines. Let's get into some utilization. Big games, big moments, and even bigger upside this week. I have teamed up with DraftKings Pick Six to give you a new way to get in on the action. With Pick Six, you ride the upside by making simple predictions. Will a player score more or less than the number listed? You put your picks together, and the more you hit, the bigger your payout. And right now, there's an incredible offer. New DraftKings Pick Six customers play $5 on your first pick set and get $50 back in bonus bets. That's right. All you need to do is play $5 on your first entry, and you'll get $50 in bonus picks instantly. So don't miss your shot to ride the upside. Download DraftKings Pick Six, get on all the action, sign up using my promo code FANTASYLIFE. Thanks to DraftKings Pick Six for sponsoring this. Let's make this season one to remember. It's the Utilization Report presented by DraftKings here on the Fantasy Life Show. And who else could we start with, Dwayne, other than apparently new Texans RB1, Woody Marks, obviously the waiver wire headliner. Hopefully you guys already had him chilling on your bench. But yes, Dwayne, it is looking like the Woody Marks RB1 era in Houston is meow.
Yeah. It's meow. 27.9 fantasy points last week. He had a 58% snap share, so distanced himself from Mr. Nick Chubb. The week before, he had really moved into that clear, secondary role behind Chubb with a 40% snap share. So just taking it to the next level this week. And the big thing with Woody Marks is something that's very important to us in fantasy football when we talk about running backs, and that's the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. And if you look at what he did in college, Ian, he had a 22% career targets per route run. He averaged 26.4 receiving yards per game for his career. He had a 12% target share, which is 65th percentile. Those receiving yards per game, that ranks that is actually the ninth that's in the top 20 since 2014, looking at all of the backs that have come out. So, he's just one of these guys that when he's on the field and you look at the Texans offense and the fact that really behind Nico Collins, nothing is happening right now. Maybe Christian Kirk will be something, but Jaden Higgins hasn't really done much. Xavier Hutchinson with his opportunities hasn't done much. Jalen Noel, none of these guys have really done anything. It's just easy, man. You could just get the ball to this guy. You got an offensive line falling apart in front of you. You can just design some stuff. And they've even been doing that with Nick Chubb a little bit, designing some things for Nick Chubb in the pass game, which I don't think is necessarily a bad idea with how much pressure CJ Stroud has been under. So, yeah, man, you got Nico Collins. Oh, you don't have Nico Collins? You can throw to a guy like Woody Marks that was really good as a receiver out of the backfield in college. So, yeah, man, I went through. And so just to kind of be conservative, because we don't know for sure, he was at 40% of the snaps 2 weeks ago. This week, he was closer to 60%. But I just took his utilization score over the last 2 games, which is a 70, and said, okay, we'll just kind of middle it, and we'll act like, okay, Nick Chubb is still going to be involved here. And I went back and looked at his comps. Running backs that finished between running back 1 and running back 12 based on his utilization score, 22%. So not a ton, but man, you've got outs. You're live to have a running back 1 out of this. Running back 13 to running back 24. 49% of them, Ian. And then 29% were running back 3. So running back 25 to running back 36. So that's a pretty good range there. Most of these guys were in that running back 2 category. And a lot of it does come back to his pass down ability. And then we did get some clarity yesterday on the Joe Mixon stuff, which was just basically they have no clue when he'll be back and they don't feel very good about it. So that was kind of the one thing kind of lingering out there, that if all of a sudden we got surprised that Mixon was back, that would be a problem, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be the case.
Again, heard from Coach DeMeco Ryans that he really has no update on Mixon coming back. And then reporter Aaron Wilson basically confirmed that per his sources, it is looking like it is going to be much longer, if not the entire season, that Mixon is out. So wheels up for Woody Marks. Unfortunately, we'll not get to play the Titans every single week. But I don't know, Dwayne, this banged up Ravens defense might be the next best thing, particularly now that the Texans actually have an opportunity to build a lead without Lamar Jackson under center. So again, everything looking very good for Woody Marks. I'm with you where I'm trying to be a little bit conservative just in the the first week. I ranked him RB25 in my way too early ranks. But man, even just as we start looking at the matchup a little bit more and more, I could see myself boosting him up. So again, deservedly so, the number one waiver wire pickup. This is someone that you should be absolutely trying to blow all your fab to go ahead and get. So I will say too, man, Texans offensive line, they are 10th in RB rush yards before contact per carry. They're below average in all the pass pro stuff. So again, hasn't been pretty overall, Dwayne, but I would like to think that CJ Stroud and company could perhaps figure this thing out as the season continues to progress.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think a player like Woody Marks can actually help in the pass game. You just get the running backs a little more involved. If you're dealing with a lot of pressure, and it's just an easy outlet that you can go to. They can design stuff for him. And Marks looked really good in space last week. Like, honestly, he looked good in a phone booth. Like, he made some people miss in some really tight spaces around the line of scrimmage. So yeah, I'm with you. I don't know that the Texans offensive line is built for Stroud to hold the ball, super long. And he's we've seen him do that, right? He doesn't want to check the ball down, but if they create more design stuff for a guy like Woody Marks, I do think that could go a long way for the passing attack.
Next up in the utilization report, Dwayne, James Cook dominating the Bills backfield, RB2 in Fantasyland. What a time to be alive.
Dude, utilization score last year, which we loved James Cook last year, but he finished the year with a score of 66. Guys, everything's on a scale of 0 to 100. Now he's at an 84. His snaps have gone up from 48% to 61%. His rushing attempt share has gone up from 52% last year to 70% this year. If you look at his route participation, it's also gone up 10 percentage points from 40 to 50. Target share slightly up. And of course, the fantasy points are following, Ian. 17.1 fantasy points per game last year, which we loved, but now you're getting 22.8. I just did the rest of season projections, finished those up before I hopped onto this show. And James Cook came out as the running back 3. And I kept looking. There's a lot of guys we really like, but I mean, guys, that's just what James Cook is. He's a mid-range to high-end running back 1 right now. And as long as the Bills keep feeding him like they're doing, Ian, he must have got a clause in the contract that just said, feed me. I'm tired of sharing the rock. And dude, he looks great. Just watching James Cook, the little subtle moves he makes, it's not like the big jump cuts. It's just the slalom skiing kind of stuff when he gets through the hole and his balance. Just, he looks fantastic.
Certainly set up well pretty much in any matchup, especially this Sunday night with the Bills facing the Patriots team that we'll see if they can keep up. If not, again, expect Cook to put forward yet another big performance. That said, Dwayne, another top running back we want to talk about, and that is Jahmyr Gibbs, perhaps starting to distance himself from David Montgomery this year.
Yeah, so I was digging into this. I looked at it a couple of weeks ago and I was like, it's too early. Like, we don't know. I don't want to overreact to something. So I waited till we had 4 weeks. But if you look at Gibbs, kind of similar to what we just talked about with James Cook, not to the same extent, but utilization score went from 73 last year to an 89. And last year, I'm only looking at the games weeks 1 through 14 before that injury to David Montgomery. So really looking at when you had both of the players available. Snaps went from 52 to 63%. Attempts have moved up from 45 to 52%. Route participation's up almost 10 percentage points, 50 to 59%. And the targets, Ian, is the really big thing here. 12% last year for Jahmyr Gibbs, now sitting at a 19%. Obviously, that's impacting Jameson Williams. That's impacting Sam Laporta. It's not hurting Sun God, because Sun God's still just a Sun God. He's doing his thing. But man, we've got more targets right now going through Jahmyr Gibbs. So yeah, we're starting to see a little bit more distance between these two guys than what we saw in the first 2 seasons. It's not like David Montgomery doesn't have a role at all, but Jahmyr Gibbs clearly moving more into, where maybe it was more of a 1B before. Now it is really more of a 1A, maybe 2A kind of thing. It's no longer just Montgomery right there, even with Gibbs.
In those first 14 weeks of last season, yes, Gibbs was the primary pass down back. He had 42 targets, but Montgomery was right there with 34. This year, it is 21-7 in favor of Gibbs. I'm just waiting for him to do literally anything with him, Dwayne. He has 79 yards on 20 catches. That is dead last in the NFL among all players with at least 15 receptions. I've went all the way back to 2000. That is the 13th worst yards per reception mark in freaking 25 years. I don't think that's going to keep on. It's just going to take one screen for Gibbs to bust it 50 plus yards. But I do wonder, Dwayne, if this is going to necessarily persist, because as much as maybe a couple years ago, we'd be screaming, oh my gosh, how are you giving the ball to David Montgomery? Look how explosive Gibbs is. This year it's kind of Montgomery that's honestly making the most out of his touches. I mean, career best 5.7 yards per carry. I know he couldn't get going against the Browns, but nobody has. And only go back 1 week before that, and he was torching, the Ravens for $151 and 2 scores. So again, do you lean towards this more so just being a small sample, or do you actually think that Montgomery is someone where in tougher matchups, this week against the Bengals looking like an absolute smash, it could be a situation where week 13, we just can't even start Montgomery?
Yeah, I mean, we can never know for sure. I don't think we'll be to a situation where we just can't play Montgomery because the Lions offense is so good. Like, even if he's stuck getting 35, 40% of the work, like, it's going to be better than some backs getting 55% in their offense. So I think Monty's going to be fine. But when you look at Gibbs, like, back to your question, like, I do think they're trying to make this happen, because we were hearing it in the preseason as well. We were hearing these reports out of camp that they were using Gibbs more with the first team offense. And so it feels like it is kind of a continuation of that. To your point, like, if Gibbs, doesn't start to pick up, like in the efficiency department, could the coaches change their mind? Yeah. But you and I have also looked at efficiency like every which way to Sunday, and we know how fluky it can be. And my eyes tell me that Jahmyr Gibbs is just an amazing player still. So my gut says that, like, the efficiency stuff, like you said, it's probably going to work itself out. So I kind of lean towards this sticking. I don't think we get to this point, though, where, like, Montgomery's just a complete zero. I think we're just in a situation where they're basically saying, hey, we're going to give like an extra 5 to 10% of the work to Gibbs.
We'll say, at least for this week, guys, get David Montgomery lineups of all shapes and sizes. We are looking at an offense as implied for a week high 29.5 points as 10-point favorites against a Bengals defense that looks like a mixture of bad and quitting on their entire season. So yeah, D-Mon again really set up well. Bengals have also allowed the third worst mark in terms of RB rush yards before contact per carry, but certainly something to keep in mind the rest of the way. Before we move on to some wide receivers, again, I did want to talk about our fine friends over at DraftKings. New DraftKings Pick Six customers, you can play $5 on your first pick set and get $50 back in bonus bets, so don't miss your shot to ride the upside. Download DraftKings Pick Six, get on all the action, and sign up using my promo code FANTASYLIFE. Look out. Nah, it's okay. But Dwain, seriously, look out. These wide receivers are getting healthy, and we are going to be talking about them. Starting off with Chiefs wide receiver 1, at least for the near term. Obviously, Rashee Rice will be back before too long. Just continuing to stare at him on my fantasy benches, waiting for that great day where we get to elevate him back. But for now, Dwain, wheels up, Xavier Worthy.
Yeah, look, I mean, with Worthy coming back, like, they didn't play him a ton of snaps, 59%, which, hey, that's fine. We don't really need him out there blocking, in the run game whenever he's trying to get back with the shoulder injury. But he had a 71% route participation. My guess is that continues to grow. But despite not being like 90% guys is like what we typically see for like a wide receiver 1. So obviously not fully back to where they want him to be, but he still ended up leading the team with a 24% target share. So, I mean, when you look at that, 27% targets per route run. And then you look at what Andy Reid did with him in the run game. He had 2 carries for 38 yards. 29% of his reps came in from inside in the slot. He also got a carry on an RPO, and he had a screen target as well. So when he was out there, they were just trying to do everything they could to get the guy the ball, Ian. And he was also working down the field. So, like, if you're looking on the screen and you're looking at the comparison tool over in the utilization suite of tools, and you look at that average depth of target for the weekend was at 16.6. So also getting deep shots down the field. So, man, just like really nothing we can complain about other than, hey, we hope that route participation continues to go up. And like I said, my guess is that it will. And to your point, man, until Rashee Rice is back, like, they just don't have anything else. Like, Tyquan Thornton's done some nice things, but I mean, we've got Juju Smith-Schuster. Honestly, Hollywood Brown had that one game to open the season, has pretty much looked pretty bad in that game, but he got the targets, hasn't looked good since then. His role is shrinking down to 60% route participation this weekend. And then, as much as we hate to say it, like, Kelsey just hasn't done anything yet this year. He's got a 15% target share. So I feel like, yeah, Worthy, man, he's locked into the weapon number 1. Like, there's not even a running back we want to get the ball to here. So I just see Worthy being the guy. And honestly, we'll have to reassess when we get Rashee Rice back. But Ian, like, if I'm the Chiefs, like, I'm just running everything through Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy. I mean, that just feels like the plan. You look at their drop back rate over expected, super pass heavy. You got Patrick Mahomes basically saying, hey, just let me throw the ball. If we're going to go down, let's not go down with 3 yards per carry with Pacheco and, Kareem Hunt. Let's let Mr. Patrick Mahomes throw the ball. So I think this is great. I moved him to mid-range wide receiver 2 status. So I don't know where you put him in the early ranks, though.
He's my wide receiver 8. Freeman's got him wide receiver 18 because he's a coward. Waz got him wide receiver 14. But Dwayne, I'm not even sure if wide receiver 8 is high enough. All right, and look, people aren't really going to have this problem, but if your life was literally on the line this week and you need someone to score more fantasy points, would you pick Xavier Worthy or Jamar Chase? Because I think I'm picking Xavier Worthy.
Oh, wow. I have not looked at any of the matchups or anything. So, that's pretty bold. But yeah. Hey, it's still Jamar Chase. So I don't know, man. We'll see. We'll see when I look at it.
You hear that hesitation, though? That should tell you all you need to know. Because, again, I got Chase wide receiver 6, so I certainly did rank him ahead of Worthy for now. Maybe I am proving to be a fraud, the fact that I so confidently said it Worthy. But again, my point is I want this dude in lineups of all shapes and sizes. Dwayne, the first play of the game, they threw Worthy a swing pass, and we talked about this on our Sunday night review pod. Got absolutely kind of jacked up. I think Marlon Humphrey got an unnecessary roughness penalty, popped back up. He was fine. He actually beat Humphrey down the sideline later, which again was a rarity to ever really see last season, save for the second half of the Super Bowl. And then even with the Chiefs up multiple touchdowns in the fourth quarter, man, they were still willing to throw Worthy swing passes. So he got the 2 rush attempts, as you mentioned. I mean, there was nothing about his usage other than just a slightly reduced route rate to indicate that they were treating him as anything other than the focal point of their offense. So again, Chase versus Worthy, whatever, you can feel how you want about that. But moral of the story, guys, get Worthy in the lineups of all shapes and sizes. I challenge any of you listeners to show me a fantasy lineup where he should not be starting. I do not think one exists. Moving along, though, Dwayne, we do have another wide receiver returning from injury, also demanding quite a few targets in his debut. Chris Godwin, welcome back. Actually set up fairly nice this week against the Seattle Seahawks. Looking at some of their underlying metrics on defense, against slot wide receivers, actually have been quite poor so far. So I know Witherspoon missed some time. It's only a 4-week sample, but Chris Godwin, Dwayne, someone where I ranked him as wide receiver 31. I thought that was honestly too low as I was doing it, and I saw Freeman and Waz are even lower. So we'll see what happens. But again, just the more I feel about this, I think we're good on Godwin. He passed the eye test for me, and it sounds like the utilization was good too.
Yeah, I mean, he only gave us 5.6 fantasy points, which is something that a lot of people are going to pay attention to. I had a lot of people, hitting me up online on Twitter saying, oh my God, he looks slow. And I'm also thinking, Godwin hasn't necessarily looked fast in about 3 years. That's not his game is not built on speed at this point in his career. Never really was. He was obviously a little bit faster than he is now when he was young. But he played 91% of the routes. I mean, he was out there for almost all the pass plays. That's the number one thing. Kind of looks to me, Ian, like the Bucs ultimately just decided, hey, we're not going to play him until he's fully ready. But once we play him, we're not going through a ramp-up period. We're just going to play him. And that's what happened in this game. He had a 26% target share with 10 freaking targets. So he tied Emeka Egbuka. So while the fantasy points weren't there, the targets were there, the playing time was there. We know he's got a connection with Baker Mayfield, probably going to be without Mike Evans for another week. We will see where that ultimately lands. So in the immediate short term, yeah, absolutely wheels up. I did upgrade him to wide receiver 3 territory. I was wondering where you landed on him as far as the early ranks, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's a wide receiver 2 this week. I think my question is, how do you feel about these guys? And I kind of have my idea. I just did, like I said, the rest of the season projections before jumping on the show, which I have to think about when Mike Evans comes back. How do you see this thing playing out once we have all 3? Do you think just Baker starts balling and that basically makes everything okay? Or do you see it being something where one of these guys kind of gets left out each week? It's a lot of mouths to feed.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, man. Again, the history of one offense enabling 3 top 24 wide receivers, very, very slim. We saw Peyton's Broncos do it with Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, Wes Welker back in the day. But the only 2 examples since then, I think it was the 2017 or 18 Rams and then the 2020 Buccaneers. And both were kind of weird instances where Cooper Kupp played 8 games, Antonio Brown played 8 games, and it ended up not being a full season's worth of it. So I think it is concerning. And Dwayne, if you are hinting towards the unimaginable of selling high on Emeka Egbuka, I don't think it's the worst thing ever. Am I allowed to say that? Look, I mean, again, obviously the dude is very talented, but so is Mike Evans. So is Chris Godwin, who we were honestly wondering, man, a month ago, like, when is this dude going to be back? And if he is back, is he even going to be close to the same sort of guy? So given the reality that, again, Godwin is looking very much back to maybe not 100%, but pretty close, I don't know, man, because as much as Emeka Egbuka has been making plays, and I am not trying to be a hater, but just go back and watch the receptions for yourselves, guys. It's not like this dude is just snapping off and creating 15 yards of separation. He's making tough contested catches, which is great. He's a really freaking good receiver. So are Mike Evans. So are Chris Godwin. If you can sell Egbuka as a legit wide receiver one, Dwain, that would be where I'd be more interested.
Yeah, that's the key. You want to. We're not telling you to sell Egbuka for cheap. The whole idea is that you go to someone and they're super excited about Egbuka, which means they want to pay you something that's worth basically the excitement that surrounds this guy right now. So when I did the rest of season projections, Egbuka came out as my top buck. So again, we're not saying that he's not going to be good, but he didn't great. He wasn't a top 12 wide receiver. He was down closer to low end wide receiver 2 territory because I've got Mike Evans coming back after this week. And so, yeah, man, I'm not against it either. But again, make sure that someone really has to pay for it, because we also have seen these guys like this just keep on keeping on when they break out so early as rookies. So I do agree, though, if you can get a good price.
I'm looking at some of the trades that have been done on Yahoo Sports today, and I do think a couple of these kind of paired up values could make some sense. Emeka Egbuka and Devon Achane for Bijan Robinson, Emeka Egbuka and Alvin Kamara for CeeDee Lamb, something like that. Okay, if I am trading Emeka Egbuka, I want to get a legit star top 10 player to position, because again, that's basically what Emeka has already been this year. To Dwayne's point, not expecting him to fall off a cliff or anything like that, but again, just maybe a situation where it's going to be a more crowded offense, going to be tough for him to completely keeping on there. Last, again, wide receiver coming back from injury. You could say he's been out there, but not quite like this. Stefon Diggs, first 100-plus yard game since October of 2023, last Sunday against the Panthers. And you might be saying, oh, it's against the Panthers. Who cares? Still, even after that, the Panthers have allowed league low marks in receiving yards allowed to opposing wide receivers. J.C. Horn isn't a scrub out there, okay? Honestly, Dwayne, watching the film back, Diggs looked very good out there, actually creating some separation downfield. And perhaps even more importantly, this Patriots offense is starting to stabilize. Drake May really posting top 10 numbers across the board. So the schedule hasn't been tough. I understand that. But you know what? I don't hear people bring up the schedule every single time we talk about Josh Allen having a good start in the season either. So again, end of the day, Dwayne, Drake May throwing for a good amount of yards per game. He's a pass, guys like Jared Goff and Patrick Mahomes this year. And Stefon Diggs looking healthy. This offense needs a number one. Why not Stefon Diggs?
Yeah, I mean, just go with everything you said. That's what I said in the utilization report. I mean, look, I think the big thing here is we did see a clear jump. Like, he's been in the 50s in route participation percentage. He got up to an 82%. So you got the first 3 games, just wasn't quite right. And we're taking this as a sign that they are going to get him on the field more. Now, he might plateau for a few weeks, Ian, before hopefully we see him up around like a 90%. But everything you just said is like huge. Number one, we don't have another target earner on the team. He actually has the highest targets per route run on the season at 22%, despite not being fully healthy and playing through this. And then we have the situation where we've got Drake May throwing for a lot of yardage. Drake May's thrown for 247 yards per game. That's the 6th most in the NFL this year. He's got the number 1 completion rate in the league at 74%, the 6th highest yards per attempt at 8.0. He ranks 8th in passing touchdowns per game at 1.75. We're sitting here stuck having to talk about all these wide receivers that have crappy quarterback play. Stefon Diggs does not have a crappy quarterback. He has a quarterback that's really playing good and not much target competition other than mainly like Hunter Henry, who's more of like an 18, 19% target share guy. Like, dude, if Stefon Diggs has a 25% target share, like from week 6 through the end of the year, week 5 through the end of the year on this offense, like, he's going to easily be in the wide receiver 2 range. And there's a chance, like, if he scores touchdowns, that like he could be knocking on the door for wide receiver 1. I'm not saying he's going there, guys, but I've upgraded him to wide receiver 3 territory. Won't be surprised at all, though, if we have another positive data point next week and I'm like, yep, Stefon Diggs is in the wide receiver 2 conversation.
And I get some of the hesitation that people had trusting Diggs going to this year, but I just think based on how he's looked and all the usage things you just brought up, we kind of need to change our opinions as we get new information about this Patriots wide receiver room. And Dwayne, training camp all-star Demario Douglas has 13 yards on 5 catches through 4 weeks. We have Mac Hollins continuing to be a progress stopper and keeping Kyle Williams glued to the bench. Hunter Henry is doing great. He's scoring a lot of touchdowns, scoring a lot of fantasy points. That's fantastic. But just, again, look at this wide receiver room objectively. If anyone is going to break out, it's 100% Stephon Diggs.
Yeah. I mean, Kayshon Boutte's the next closest wide receiver, and he has a 13% target share. I mean, it's like we can't overstate how wide open this room is. And it's not like we're saying Diggs is going to have a 30% target share, but I mean, dude, he's at a 22% targets per route run for the year. So like, I just think there's room for him to be 23, 25% targets. And man, before he got hurt last year with the Texans, he was playing good. He was earning targets on a team where he had to do it with Nico Collins there. He was doing it on a team where Tank Dell wasn't hurt yet, and he was having to keep him off the field. So I don't think we should just pretend that Diggs is completely washed. Yes, he's an older player coming back from injury, but this is a positive data point.
Again, guys, not to get political here, okay? But Stephon Diggs has not finished worse than the wide receiver 25 since Barack Obama was in office. So, again, seems like a situation where certainly the front runner to lead this Patriots passing game that, looks good. Very much looking forward to that Patriots-Bills Sunday night kickoff because, Dwayne, revenge game special in Buffalo. Come on, Diggs, if you're not going off in this one, man, I don't know what you're doing. So, good stuff on those wide receivers, Dwayne. Now let's get into some rookie running backs. I actually have some good things to say about them this week. Dwayne, don't cry, dry your eyes. These rookie RBs are fine. You are a wordsmith, my friend. Shout out to Snoop Dogg himself and shout out to Omarion Hampton, Mr. Ride or Die, doing huge things for the Chargers. So impressive last week. I know we can start every single Omarion Hampton conversation for the rest of the year saying, oh, well, he got lucky. Najee Harris got hurt. It happened. Injuries happen. And just living in the present, Dwayne, Omarion Hampton looking like a lot like a rest of season RB1.
Yeah, and also, guys, like these rookies grow their roles over the season. Like I've put the research out there for you to look at. So we also don't know that he wouldn't have like got going even with Najee Harris there. But to your point, let's just move forward. The main thing is if you have Omarion Hampton on your fantasy team right now, you are absolutely giddy. I mean, this guy had an 88% snap share. He accounted for 100% of rushing attempts this last weekend, and he ended up with 27.5 fantasy points. So, I mean, you got 2 back-to-back weeks where you're well into the 20s with the fantasy points per game. He's posted a utilization score of 90 or higher in the last 2 games. And so I think the easiest way to look at Hampton, though, Ian, so we'll include week 1, which was a stinker when he had a full-time role. So let's include that. And then let's exclude week 2, where it was more of a split with Najee. But then week 3, Najee got hurt. And then last week, week 4, he had it all to himself. We look at those 3 games, weeks 1, 3, and 4. He has a utilization score of 84.7. He has fantasy points 20.2 per game. 83% of the snaps, 84% of the rushing attempts, 64% route participation, and 11% target share. So since 2020, we've got 43 running backs that have had a similar utilization score to that. And again, this is being conservative, guys. Those guys have actually averaged 16.5 fantasy points per game. 63% of them finished as a top 12. 37% of them did finish in running back 2 territory. So I don't know if Hampton continues putting up 20.2 fantasy points per game in such a pass-heavy offense. That's the thing. Even though he's getting all the carries, like the Chargers are the number 1 drop back rate over expected team in the NFL. Now, maybe they'll change that with Joe Alt going to miss some time with a high ankle sprain. Maybe they run the ball a little bit more, but these 15 and 13% target shares in these last 2 games, Ian, like that's what's encouraging because like when they have decided, okay, we're going to throw it, they're just getting him his touches in the passing game. I don't think he'll ever be a 17, 18% guy because they have 3 other good receivers, but when Herbert needs to check it down, he's willing just to do it with him right now. So I think he's locked into low-end running back 1 status right now. I don't think he's quite like a 24, 25 point per game player, but obviously looking really good.
He is top 10 in terms of receptions and receiving yards this year. Really, again, showing to be every bit worthy of being a three-down workhorse this early into his NFL career. And again, can't state enough how impressive he really was against the Giants. He made my PPR hater tweet of the week with this 18-yard run where he was just bouncing off of defenders. Also had that cool 54 yards, I believe, touchdown where, again, just showed that scary long speed for a man as big as him. So, yeah, Dwain, again, I have him as my RB, not even RB, I have him as my 12th overall player. And honestly, if you want to move him ahead of Derrick Henry, Bucky Irving, and Saquon Barkley, who am I to disagree? That is how good he looks out there. So again, the O-line injury sucks. Obviously, having Justin Herbert's top two tackles now both sideline, far from ideal. But you could even paint an argument that because of that, they could maybe be more inclined to get the ball out of his hands quickly, and AKA to their stud first-round rookie running back. So feeling great about Hampton the rest of the way. Dwain, if we were sitting here and we decided just to redraft for the season, which I know is basically what you're doing with your rest of season ranks, I don't know how Hampton would make it out of round one.
Yeah, I think he would be a round one or an early round two pick. Yeah, I mean, I haven't gone to look and see what's happening in the weekly stuff over on Underdog where you can get an idea around those things. But yeah, if you looked at a redraft right now, I mean, he's a borderline round one pick. So it's funny. Everybody was in complete panic mode 2 weeks ago. And the whole thing was, oh man, like Hampton would have been like a round 6 or 7 pick then because people overreact to everything. So the data says he's probably more like a mid round 2 pick, but I don't think people would be able to stop themselves, Ian.
Speaking of overreactions, guess who's back? Mr. Ashton Genty changed to the Michael Myers stance and everything got back to normal. Dwain, first 3 weeks of the year, he was the PPR RB 24, 36, and 43. That said, not a single running back scored more PPR points than Genty in week 4. I have petitioned the NFL to see if Ashton Genty can face the Bears every single week, so I'll let you guys know how that process is going. But at a minimum, Dwain, we did like the utilization we saw from Genty because mainly they kept him on the field on pass downs for once.
Yeah, I mean, the big difference is in week 2 and 3, they used Zamir White on long down and distance, and they used Dylan Lobby in the 2-minute offense. This week, we had Zamir White out for the game. He was a healthy scratch, and they had Raheem Mostert up. And we saw really Genty get to keep both of those roles. Now, they didn't really use a ton of the 2-minute offense this weekend. They used a little bit of it, and we did still see a little bit of a rotation off the field for Genty. But man, he had this 85% snap share on the weekend, 72% of the rushing attempts, and a 57% route participation. It just looked really good, Ian. We've talked about how patient he is, how he's really looked strong, but the offensive line has been a challenge. The offensive line, was still a challenge this weekend, but they did open up a few holes for him. Some of it he was just doing on his own. So yeah, really excited to see Genty back in this full-time role. So we've got 2 games now where he's had that. When I did the rest of season projections, obviously I didn't give him all of that back. So I gave him some of that back, and he came in as the running back 12 the rest of the way. So if you look at his historical comparisons, and this is looking at his utilization score for the season, guys. So for all 4 games, so this is going to be a little more conservative. If you think that they're going to stop taking him off the field on pass downs like they did in weeks 2 and 3, you could exclude those. But 14.5 points per game is what the comps from the utilization score going back to 2020. That's for 47 running backs. 22% of those guys did give you a top 12 finish. But if you want to take a little bit more bullish approach and just look at really what he did as far as utilization in weeks 1 and 4, where he really had more of the full-time role, Ian, that would come out to 15.5 fantasy points per game, where you've got more than half of those guys going on to finish as running back 1s instead of running back 2s. So we'll see. We'll see what next week looks like. It could be somewhere between those 2 things, but you can't help but get excited for Genty. Like I said, rest of season ranks, he's my running back 12.
He's got the Colts this next week. They have been fairly stingy against running backs, allowing the 6th fewest PPR points per game in position. But after that, he actually gets back-to-back pretty nice matchups here against the Titans and the Chiefs, a.k.a. defenses that rank just 29th and 23rd in those metrics. So again, not saying that all of a sudden, oh my gosh, Genty getting the top 5 generational talent. You guys are all freaking idiots for ever doubting him. Again, mentioned that Colton Miller left tackle injury, not going to make life easy for someone who still really does have to work for most of his yardage. But again, just good seeing that big play upside and good seeing him continue to break a lot of tackles on the season. Now, Bijan Robinson is the only running back with more missed tackles forced than the 6th overall pick. Last one, Mr. Dwain, and this will be a shout out to an Ohio State Buckeye, Genty Judkins, RB2 in yards after contact per carry this year, RB1 in his fantasy manager's hearts, because this dude is going out there, even in a bad situation, Dwain, and absolutely balling out.
Yeah, I mean, 19 fantasy points per game in the 2 games where he, basically was the full-time starter. He's the running back 11 over the last 2 weeks. He's got a utilization score of 79 over that stretch. If we go back and look at his historical comps, Ian, they've averaged 15.4 fantasy points per game. But man, 60% of the snaps, and look at that, 81% rush share. Absolutely elite stuff. So that was in week 4. If you look at his rushing share over the last 2 games, it's 87%. So essentially, he's the entire rushing offense. Like, he's getting all the work. I know some folks have actually asked me, hey, so what about, the benching of Flacco? What does that mean? I guess the good news, Ian, is that Flacco's been terrible. So maybe Dylan Gabriel or one of these guys can just be like basically a little better than rookie terrible and be good enough to be like old man veteran terrible, which might be like 190 passing yards per game, because Flacco was like around 204, I think was where he was on the season. So obviously, like, he knows probably better how to get to his checks and get in and out of certain looks and things. He's seen so many defensive fronts over his career. So maybe there's some slight little, issue for Judkins, but man, I just feel like Cleveland's making a youth movement, and Judkins is the spearhead of that. Like, he's the guy at the tip of the spear. So if you've got Judkins, I think you feel really great. The only caveat I'll throw out there is he still does not have the passing down work. So if they get into these trailing scripts, it could be a problem, but that happened last week. And they just decided to throw in the ball on first and second down, Ian, and it ended up being fine. And he was good on his reception. So it can be a little bit more fluky, though, as far as you getting those looks, especially when they've got other mouths to feed. So, yeah, I've upgraded Judkins to mid-range running back 2 territory. So we've already reached the status of, I remember 2 weeks ago, we were on the Sunday night show, and you're like, yeah, Dwayne, it's great, but can we ever get past a mid-range running back 2? Well, we're going to see, because we've already got him there.
Hey, I mean, touch counts have been, I believe, 20 and then 24, 25 over these past 2 weeks. They're force feeding the man the ball. And I do think that point about how bad Flacco has been, Dwayne, certainly does ring true. I don't want to say things can't get worse, because those are kind of the famous last words here when talking about football and especially fantasy. But truly, guys, if you do look at an EPA and CPOE composite, which is a very, stupid fancy way of saying, just a quarterback ranking, okay? EPA per dropback is one of the best measures we have. And then looking at CPOE, that is completion percentage over expected. Again, using this combined metric, only Cam Ward has been worse than Joe Flacco this season. So, hey, maybe Dylan Gabriel is going to take, level of sucking to an entirely new level there. But again, great things so far from Quinshon Judkins, and set up reasonably well this week. I mean, if the Browns were going to be able to get a lead on someone, I do think the Carson Wentz-led Vikings qualify. And that is a defense that, as great as they are against the pass, they have been able to be had a little bit more there on the ground. So, yeah, Dwayne, look, again, we're adjusting as the season goes on. Right now, Quinshon Judkins, my 27th ranked player overall this week. I was starting him ahead of guys like Trey Benson, Deebo Samuel, Breece Hall, among others. I feel good about it.
Yeah, man. Look, I mean, he's getting fed. He's looked really good with the opportunities that he's had. And they have a defense that can play. I get it. They've had some rough matchups. But overall, like, I expect the Browns defense to keep them pretty close in games, and I think that goes a long way for Judkins as well. We'll see what happens. I would love to see him take over the passing down work, but to your point, like, with the touch counts he's had, like, he hasn't even necessarily needed it.
By the way, everyone, while we're on the topic of the Browns defense, I actually have been running some numbers now that we have actually 4 data points, as Dwayne said, looking at the best strength of schedule. So I will talk about this on the Wednesday show with Cooter and Jake as well. But some of you might be doing your waiver wires tonight, so I did want to get this out. Okay, the Patriots defense until week 14, they're basically our new 49ers, okay? They are not going to have a single rough matchup other than the Bills this week. We do not want to start them against Josh Allen and company. I fully understand that. The Browns can get you there, though, okay? The Browns, again, have Carson Wentz and the Vikings this week. And if you want to hold on to them, they have the Steelers next week, Dolphins, and then the Patriots afterwards before their bye. But again, cannot say enough good things about the potential to scoop up these Patriots, because I'm guessing a lot of people are going to be kind of ditching them with the bye week happening. And Dwayne, look, I know that we do want to try to prioritize defenses that are great in real life. And I don't think the Patriots defense is necessarily great. That said, getting number 1 cornerback Christian Gonzalez back is pretty awesome. And man, if we had to go through and start ranking some of these special teams units and what they can do as returners, bro, I do think Marcus Jones, Antonio Gibson, Travion Henderson really do qualify. So again, that schedule after the Bills this week: Saints, Titans, Browns, Falcons, Bucs, Jets, Bengals, and Giants. I mean, if Michael Penix and Baker Mayfield are the only concerns until week 14, I can't get behind that. So again, Browns this week, hopefully the Patriots though through week 14. That has been your DST minute. But enough of that. That probably doesn't even affect more than 20% of you, so I apologize. But Dwayne, let's get into quarter four here on the Fantasy Live Show. It is time for some buy lows and sell highs. Just saying the buy lows and sell highs followed by that. I think catching music, Dwayne, does remind me of that just ever amazing Peter Overzet video making fun of us fantasy analysts trying to be all cool and then all of a sudden talking about the most nerdy stuff imaginable. But that is our profession after all. Shout out to the GOAT Pete. Did want to talk about, again, 4 different players here that maybe it is time to look at that utilization and let that do the talking necessarily over the performance. So starting off with Dwayne, a running back who carried everyone to their fantasy championship last year, but the sledding has been tough so far in 2025. Talk about Saquon Barkley and what you're kind of feeling moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, with Barkley, look, it's going to be tough to get anyone to trade him, but trades are starting to happen, Ian, around Barkley. I saw him go straight up for Drake London earlier this week, looking over on fantasycalc.com. I'm looking at a trade right now where Saquon Barkley for George Pickens and Kenneth Walker. Like, if depending on what you're looking like, I'm doing that deal. I mean, once CeeDee Lamb's going to be back, and that's going to hurt George Pickens. Kenneth Walker's having to split time with Charbonnet. You got Saquon Barkley for Rome Odunze and George Pickens. So, I mean, guys, he's starting to get moved a little bit. I'm not going to say it's going to happen in your league, but whenever you look at what's going on with the underlying utilization, an 89 right now, that's the same score he had last year, Ian, when he was averaging 22.8 fantasy points per game, and right now he's averaging 15.7. If you also look at his opportunities, rushing attempts per game last year, 21.7 is down to 18.8, but he's making it up with targets. His targets have gone up from 2.7 to 4 targets per game. And we know that targets are actually worth more than carries because you get an automatic point if you're in a PPR league just for catching the ball. So if you look at Barkley's historical comparisons, not that we even need to do this, he's Saquon Barkley, but looking at other 34 other running backs that had the same utilization score as him, they scored 18.1 fantasy points per game. So if you somehow need an assurance that beyond just Saquon Barkley himself, we're talking about a running back one, and that's what we have here. So just saying, go kick the tires, guys. Like, not saying you're going to end up getting it, but like, once he has the blow-up game, no one's ever going to trade you Saquon Barkley. Right now, they're at least willing to consider it if you put the right package together.
And again, it's not like he's the only great running back who just hasn't really busted that big, long run just yet. Josh Jacobs actually leads the NFL with 80 carries without a 20-plus yard run. Saquon's right behind him, but Bucky Irving, Christian McCaffrey, Kyron Williams is right there. I don't think anyone's sweating Bucky Irving's low yards per carry, Dwayne, because he is getting fed the ball, and he's also making plays in the pass game. 2 things that, again, Saquon's certainly more than capable of doing in his own right. So I will say, eye test-wise, yeah, sure, we haven't seen the big-time explosive run yet, but Saquon still has looked like his usual shifty self when he's gotten the ball in the open field. And I just think this Eagles offensive line has been banged up, man. Lane Johnson had the stinger in week 3, shoulder last week. Their interior offensive line also playing through a little bit of pain. I mean, this group, man, in 2021, RB rush yards before contact per carry, first. 2022, fourth. 2023 and 2024, first. This year, they're 16th, okay? So hasn't been exactly the easiest sledding here for the entire Eagles offense, but it's Saquon Barkley. Very, very confident he's going to get going here soon. I like that call. I'm a little surprised about this next one, though, Dwayne. You are talking about one of your boys here, someone that you have been awfully high on to start the year and awfully correct about. Talk about Deebo Samuel and why maybe, just maybe, it's time to sell high.
Yeah, and if you wonder if I follow a process, like I am, and that's how I get to a conclusion like this, because like I didn't like it. I'm like, why is this thing telling me to sell Deebo Samuel? And I started digging deeper into it. And number one, you know, you've just got to set aside the fact that Deebo has been a hit where you got to draft him. You got to draft him as a wide receiver 4. Right now, he's the wide receiver 11 in fantasy football with 16.3 fantasy points per game, if we're talking about points per game. So you've done well. But here's the thing, his utilization score, Ian, which now accounts for rushing attempts. We made that change this offseason, so we're also accounting for what Deebo's doing on the ground. He's got a utilization score of 68. That ranks 29th versus his 11th rank, 16.3 PPR points per game. So that right off the bat should be something that's got alarm bells going off, guys, because the utilization score is not only based on their talent and, you know, in the fantasy points they're scoring, but most of it is actually based around their role and the important components of their role. So when you look at his historical utilization comparisons, Ian, they've averaged 13.1 fantasy points per game, with only 2% of them managing to finish in the top 12. The majority of his comps finish as a low-end wide receiver 2. So 63% of them finish between low-end wide receiver 2 and low-end wide receiver 3, but most of them are right there on that borderline. So again, not a player we're saying to go give away, but if someone in your league does actually believe in that 16 fantasy points per game, and then they're thinking, oh man, Jaden Daniels is going to come back, that's going to get even better, that's when I would be willing to move on from Deebo Samuel. I did go ahead and like crunch it. Even if you sell him as a mid-range wide receiver 2, based on all the outcomes that could happen, 66% of the time, historically, you would have profited on that trade. So you don't have to be stingy with him either. Like, you can trade him as a mid-range wide receiver 2. If you really need something, like I would consider like packaging Deebo with something, putting Deebo with another decent player to go try to, like what Ian talked about earlier, trying to tier up and get you a superstar.
Look, we always want to just have just a trade that the entire group may just starts belittling. I'll work on that word. The entire group starts making fun of the other person involved in the trade. That's always great. But, it's not very often we're going to get 80-20 fades in our favor. If it is going to be a close, reasonable 50-50 trade, Dwayne, I want to come away with the best overall player. Love that point again about packaging Deebo, even if you aren't in love with the sort of one-for-one offers that are on the table. Let's talk about another buy it low, though. Someone who, again, has kind of been the talk of the fantasy community over the last few weeks because, yes, his RB2 is starting to eat a little bit more into his touches than normal. Also, yes, he remains a clear-cut lead back in a very, very good offense. Talk about Kyren Williams, Dwayne, someone that maybe we should be looking to buy a little bit low on.
Yeah, so what's interesting, when I was first writing Kyren Williams up, it was as a small downgrade. And then I looked at where he's at from a performance standpoint versus what his historical comps have done. And I'm like, well, he's just slightly underperforming as well. So that would technically make him a buy low potentially, which is what we're talking about here. So look, it's not great because he is sharing more time with Corum. And I know there's people, oh man, it's nearly not that much. Well, it's not that much, but it's more than what he used to share, which was nothing. I mean, Kyren Williams got literally everything. And so Blake Corum coming out here and getting 25 to 30% of the snaps on a weekly basis is actually impacting him. It's pushed him down about 10%, right, as far as his rushing percentage goes. And then if you look at what he's done, as far as, in his passing game role, it has grown a little bit, kind of like what we talked about with Saquon to help offset that. But if you look at his comps, 34 utilization score comps, Ian, that are similar to where we have him right now, which is at a 76. They've actually averaged 14.7 fantasy points per game. Right now, he's at 13.4. So there's room for, Kyren to get better. I think he's more of a high-end running back too, the rest of the way. You've already talked about that as well. He's not a guy that we've really gotten our top 12 running backs right now, but he does play on an offense that we really like in the Rams. And unless you think that they just paid Kyren, they gave him the contract, and now they're suddenly going to give Corum like 45% of the carries by the end of this year, I think he ends up being a decent buy low here. I think he does. I don't think Kyron's going to score 18, 19 fantasy points per game like what we've seen over the last couple of years. But I do think he could be a guy that could be closer to like 15 and a half, 16. So just depending on what you can get him for. The one other thing that's getting him in that I don't think's going away is just how good Devontae Adams is once you get down inside the 10. So the passing touchdowns this year, whenever you look at what the Rams have done, they're actually 10 percentage points higher than what they were last year. So some of those runs are now turning into passing touchdowns because Adams is just doing his thing once they get inside the 10.
And again, I do think the Adams point is very well taken and certainly a piece of the puzzle that I'm not sure everyone is necessarily looking at here. I will say also, it's 4 weeks. Some of this touchdown stuff has been a little bit fluky. At the end of week 3, Kyren got them down the 1 yard line. They kneeled it out instead of giving them the football for the touchdown like they would 9 times out of 10. And week 2, he had a touchdown from the 1 yard line, nullified on a just kind of weird holding penalty I usually don't see from the 1 yard line. So again, you add 12 points to the fantasy total, and all of a sudden people are feeling awfully different about the guy. So also, Dwayne, he looks better. He looks much more like the 2023 version of himself. Yards per carry, not the end all be all, but 4.5 certainly closer to that 5.0 yards per carry versus the 4.1 last season. So I feel like people have in their head that, again, Kyren needs to be this 30 touch per game guy because he's so freaking bad out there. I haven't seen that, man. He looks pretty good to me. He's stiff arming dudes and pointing at him in the open field. Like, Kyren is looking like a very good NFL running back. That's why the Rams paid him in the first place. I like the idea of, again, trying to get him on your team if it can be at a slight discount. Let's close things out, though, Dwain, with a little more negativity. Selling high on someone with 3 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. Talk about Dallas Goedert and why that, hey, it is someone in a position where if you don't have one of the top 4 or top 5 guys, maybe not a bad idea to try to sell while you can, because what's really the difference at the end of the day?
Yeah, and some of you have Dallas Goedert on your roster as your tight end too, because you got to take him so late. And here he is. He's ranking the number 2 tight end overall in fantasy and PPR leagues with 13.8 fantasy points per game. His utilization score is at a 73, though. And so if you look at his historical comps, they've really finished more like borderline tight end ones, Ian, not high-end tight end ones. And you were talking about it. The 2 touchdowns last week were nice. They were designed touchdowns basically for Dallas Goedert from Jalen Hurts, these little flip plays down once you get inside the 5-yard line. Defense kind of loses track of Dallas Goedert. They got their hands full with Saquon as well as A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, and Goedert comes through with the touchdown. So, yeah, only 3% of his historical comps have finished as a top 3 tight end. So if you have any doubts about it, like the data just tells us. So another guy that you could potentially package together with someone else to go try to make a move up for another player. So yes, Dallas Goedert, we are moving on, more of a borderline tight end one, not a top 3 guy.
And I will say, Dwain, when you saw this on here, I wanted to be like, come on, man. Like, who's really going to buy high on Dallas Goedert or anything like that? Again, I looked at the Yahoo trade market straight up. Dallas Goedert for Jameson Williams, Dallas Goedert for Jacoby Myers. I take both those deals in a heartbeat, and maybe you guys should too, if you, again, happen to have Goedert on that squad. So great stuff, Mr. Dwain. Again, everyone, please check out the world-famous utilization report over at fantasylife.com. It is very much free, and I hope get you ready for week 5 and beyond. So we appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, if you like the show, then like the show. Always appreciate you hitting that subscribe button as well. So for Dwain, for producer Mick, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, take care, everybody.